All right, what's up, guys? We've got another episode of the Growth by Sean podcast. Cole Harris is here with me. Cole, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing very well. So, we have had a couple of conversations so far, but I was super intrigued once we got the opportunity to chat together. Your your story has been very, very interesting. So, I think that that's just a good landscape to lay out for all of us, and then we'll dive into whatever aspects we end up getting into from there. But I think you've done a lot of cool stuff so far. So I'm excited to rehear it and then ask away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'll start from the top, just give like family background to kind of set the scene so you understand where
Sure,
I'm
sure,
coming from. So,
sure.
uh, grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was raised in Buckeye in the Goodyear area. My family has a farm out there. We had 2,500 head dairy. Um, Farmers and soldiers was is our family trade. So almost all the men in my family were military. A lot of them were high ranking operators. So my brother actually just retired from Delta, first and fifth group, I think. And, my dad served in infantry. All my uncles were in Vietnam or some sort of conflict. And so what my family usually did is served in a war, came back and picked up a blue collar job of some sort. So my dad is a mechanic right now. He recently was promoted to a shop foreman position. And so very Christian family, military family. It was a very tight ship, lots of chores, lots of working on the dairy. Developed an incredible work ethic from it. And But there's also it was tough, like working out in the middle of June in Arizona. I had some resistance to that, and I remember one day I was probably 13 or 14. I was digging a hole on the dairy, and it was 110 outside, and I said, "This is not for me. there's no there's no way I'm going to do this for the rest of my life." And so I was kind of exploring, like, okay, do I want to go military? Do I want to? What other options are there for me? And a part of me did want to go military, but then a part of me also was angsty and a rebellious teenager, and I wanted to go do my own thing. So I decided in seventh grade that I wanted to go to college, and no one in my family had been to college before, and I wanted to go be a physician, and specifically a trauma surgeon, so that if I wanted to go into the military, I had that option. Because if you're a trauma
Right.
surgeon and you're a specialist, they'll let you right in to do what you got to do. So I decided in seventh grade that I wanted to go to an all boys private school in Phoenix, Arizona called Brophy College Prep. It's a Jesuit Catholic school. Um, and I remember going to my parents and asking them, and they said, "No way, that's not expensive." And being an angsty teenager that wanted to get my way, I went to my grandparents and I said, "Hey, I want to go do this." And so they actually agreed to give me chunks of my inheritance um, to pay and finance for that. And I actually
Mm.
also started a landscaping LLC and help finance some of my school that way. And so, I got accepted. It was awesome. I had an awesome career in Brophy. I actually enjoyed Brophy more than I enjoyed my college experience. Way
Okay.
more. Just an all men's environment. It was a brotherhood essentially. I learned a ton about myself, um, I was just challenged all the time. Like in order to graduate from Brophy, you had to write a long thesis indicating, do you believe in God or not? Why or why not? And you had to give a legitimate, honest answer. And there
Hmm.
was no wrong answer, but you had to give an honest answer, which was difficult for teenage boys because who asks a kid that and makes them write a paper on it? Not
Yeah.
a lot of institutions do. So a lot of self awareness developing there. Figure out who you are. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? Because that's the extra layer is, well, what do you believe? But then why do you believe it? And then that's when you start finding the rocky road of, well, how superficial are my ideas actually
Hmm.
in this realm? So I during my senior year, I was a pretty good basketball player, but didn't make the senior cut. And so it was exploring like, okay, what else do I want to do? And that's when I found CrossFit. And so I fell in love with CrossFit. And you know how back in the day they just gave you very simple wads like a 2K row. One day
Hmm.
I did a 2K row and I got a 6:42 time, which
Okay.
at that time I think was a state record in Arizona.
Okay.
And I said, oh, well, maybe I can go do collegiate rowing, even though I'm a senior and it's January. Maybe I can pop off a quick rowing scholarship. And I wanted to go to Gonzaga to study mechanical engineering. And it turns out that year, because of Title IX policies, they had cut their rowing program. And I actually had a couple buddies who lost their scholarships at Gonzaga. And so
Mm,
I was kind of like, all right, so where am I going to go to school? I was kind of angsty because I wanted this to work out because I had a short attention span and I wanted what I wanted now. And so I ended up at the University of Arizona. I got a full ride scholarship there because of my academic performance. So that was a blessing. I didn't have to pay for anything other than what went through my mouth. And then while I was at the University of Arizona, I studied physiology, biochemistry, and psychology with the objective still to go be a surgeon. Also, while I was there, I started an Olympic weightlifting program, and that's when I found Olympic weightlifting as a hobby because I was a pretty good CrossFitter going into college, and I got asked to go to the teen games, but I didn't have the money to go. So it came to the reality my freshman year of college is I can't be a full-time student trying to pursue 3 degrees and also train as much as you need to train to go
mm,
to regionals for CrossFit. It just wasn't in my wheelhouse of possibility. So I decided to switch sports that required less time and less commitment. So I ended up making a team. Um, so I made a constitution for it. I recruited kids. I found a place for them to train. I found them a really great coach, and we ended up having 3 or 4 kids qualify for a national meets, and one of them even got a silver medal. So that was a cool accomplishment, and that's when I really started to understand, all right, I have a thing for coaching. Like, because I was investing more of my time
mm,
into the athletes and my friends that were training and thinking about training concepts. And I was not focusing as much as I should have on my studies. I still graduated uh, with a solid GPA. I think it was like 3.75. Uh, I uh, I then, so once I graduated, I decided I want to take a gap year because there was still that uncertainty about medical school. And then there was also this piece of I'm not going to go start a career that requires 4 more years of school, 6 years of residency, and then I get to start unless I'm absolutely certain.
mhm,
So that next phase was I was a scribe. So about my sophomore year of college, I had started scribing for one surgeon, and then once I graduated college, I picked up 6 more surgeons. And so I was running clinics. I did preoperative reports, postoperative reports. I was working 55, 16-hour weeks. I was a glorified scribe. I was essentially a PA at the end of the day. I was
right.
even there were some points where I don't even know if this is legal, but I was able to, under supervision, do some minor procedures like hemorrhoids or cut open abscesses and pack
Yeah.
wounds or even try suturing. So I'm building up my application. I'm acquiring all these clinical hours. I'm getting these awesome letters of recommendations from some really awesome surgeons. And the first rounds of applications doesn't go well. I don't even get an interview. The second rounds of applications doesn't go well. And that particular cycle of applications was difficult because I didn't get interviewed and I got one particular rejection letter from the U of A, and my girlfriend at the time broke up with me over text message. Yeah, so it was like we were in a relationship for 3 years, and I told her I didn't get in, and she just texted me like, "Mom, I'm out. I'm done with this." And so that was
God.
the pinnacle point in my life where really I just started reevaluating like what I wanted, why I wanted
Mhm,
it. I started going back to the self-awareness mode.
mm,
Um, and I that was the peak of my angst. That weekend I went skydiving. I passed out during skydiving. So once they deployed the chute, you get the yank and the jerk from the
right.
chute, and then I was out, and I was out because I cut 10 kilos that week so I could actually go skydiving. Because at the time I weighed 275 pounds, and I had to cut down to like 260 in order to get on the plane. So
Wow.
so after that, I started really reevaluating like what do I want? What do I want? And are you familiar with Jordan Peterson's rule of three? So if
No, I don't know the rule of three. No.
So the rule of three is interesting. So it's if 3 people in 3 different communities tell you something about yourself,
Hmm.
you should listen.
Hmm.
So a couple months after this acute incident of the breakup, no medical school applications, I suddenly thought I had a cardiac condition. I had my best friend's dad had died of brain cancer. I had two members of my family get cancer all in 1 week period. So like really high stress. If I recall, 2 months prior to that, my mom fell off of a 16-foot ladder and had severe trauma. She was in the ICU. I'm pretty sure she had 2 compound fractures and shattered half her skull. So this was just like the dark age for me. It was the dark age for me. And so a lot of self-awareness developed because I was wondering a lot of things about life. Like, is this it? Do I really want to be a doctor? And so as people in 3 different communities had heard this section of my story, they said, you need to go talk to somebody about this. So I started going to go see a Christian counselor at my church. I realized in 4 months that didn't want to be a surgeon. That was more of an ego thing. That was an ego thing. And that was something that my parents and my brother had told me to do. And so I was at this point in the 3rd rounds of medical school applications. And I think I had 25 applications out and I pulled them all the next day. And then there was this abyss in front of me.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. So I was a 26-year-old male. I had committed since my freshman year of high school. I had committed my inheritance. I'd committed all this time. I built up a landscaping LLC to accomplish all this. I got 3 degrees, 10,000 hours of clinical experience. I think I had 3 or 4 publications, and those publications were related to like an FDA approved product. And so I had this awesome application and I just pulled everything and said, I don't want to do this. And there's this abyss in front of me. And I said, what am I going to do now? And so, this was the peak of self-awareness. And I was suddenly, so the first part, I was pissed off because all of that energy, all those resources gone, right? It felt like I was just throwing that away and it was all gone. The second emotion was I was pissed off because I wasn't equipped emotionally, spiritually, intellectually to figure out who am I actually and what do I want in life, and why was I not equipped by my parents, by my mentors to address this? Like there's something missing here. And then the third part, it was weird as I was talking to my counselor because she kept talking about this concept of mourning and it was so foreign to me. How do you mourn? Like, how does one mourn? Like, that is such a weird question to ask. And she was telling me these things like, yeah, if you mourn this, you'll be able to move on. And it turns out that because I was never taught to mourn, I couldn't mourn, the death of my grandmother when there was a cartel hit on our family. And, she got hit when I was 12. I had all these other traumatic deaths, like my grandfather was gored by a cow. I had an uncle die of lung cancer. And so all these things were stacked up in my nervous system that were just unprocessed, and they were making me anxious. I was waking up in the morning and I had brain fog all the time. I couldn't get a dopamine hit for doing good things. I had no sense of accomplishment. I just felt like a rat spinning his wheels. And she diagnosed me as someone who's high functioning, but also depressed at the same time, because those people exist. They just don't believe that they exist because they accomplish a lot of things. And so I was wondering, okay, how do I prevent this from happening to my 16-year-old self? That was the question, right? So how do I equip a young man with emotional, physical, and spiritual discipline, and that they know who they are, they know what they want, and they know how to mourn things when things go wrong, and then they can mourn it and then move on and open up the nervous system for joy, happiness, and other sorts of growth. And so I remember driving, I was still a scribe. I was driving to a rural community where we had a free clinic that we hosted with the surgical practice I was with. And it came to me. I said, the only way I could have taught myself all of these things was in the gym. Because when I was 16, the men that I admire were the handsome, strong, accomplished men in the gym, right? Because they were on the outside, they were admirable. And then whatever they said cold jump. And I'd say, how high? And I even talked to most of those guys that I grew up with in the gym who were 10 years older than me. I talked to one of them this morning. The idea came to me that what if I opened an all men's gym and those were my three pillars of discipline? What would the impact be in my community? And so I decided to pursue that. So I'm now, and I'm at Grand Canyon University. I'm getting a master's in clinical mental health studies and with the trauma and biblical perks on the side. So 12 credits for each. And I quit my job 3 months ago to now talk about this, so I started an Instagram. I have clients now, and I'm building the empire,
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you've lived many lives thus far,
Dude, if I had $1 every time someone said that.
but that's true, how old are you now?
27.
27? Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's give you some props first off for your first podcast. People might not have been aware of that with how intellectually you're able to come across. Let's
Oh, thank you.
let's dive in first though, okay? When you were in 7th grade, you had a dream of the medical practitioner, I'll say. I'm not 100% sure the exact words that you had used. But then you had a backup plan for the military. And each time, every instance in your story, it felt like you had some type of backup plan in a sense, right? Where if this didn't work out, I've got this. If this didn't work out, I've got this, which is interesting because right in the beginning, before we hit record, we were talking about how there's no backup plan. There's no safety net. We don't even know what we're going to talk about today. You know?
Right.
So how does that show up in your life right now? Do you have a backup plan for your mission, or are you going all in and there is no plan B?
I've thought about that question. I
Okay.
believe that my master's degree is my backup plan.
Okay.
I think I'm actually talking to my counselor about this because,
Interesting.
if I get a license, if I get an LPC, a license in professional counseling, I can go join a practice, right? So if this all goes, I go bankrupt and it goes south completely, well, I still have a license where I can hold employment. And I have had people in enlisted like Mark England and my male mentors and both the Christian and secular community, they've all said, you don't need that. Why are you giving 44 grand to pay for a master's degree when you have you've lived many lifetimes, you have the experience and the street cred for this? Why are you going to get this degree when even I know I don't need it? There's no absolute necessity, especially in today's free market with coaches. It's true. I don't need it. So why am I still doing it? And the only reason why I'm doing it thus far in my head is there are certain practices in Tucson with counselors that I would really like to get my internship with and get their mentorship with. And I'm not sure if I can legally step into that dojo with them unless I have my master's degree and I'm supported by a school. So yeah, I have that written down somewhere in my journal and I look at it every couple of days and I'm wondering, okay, do I pull the plug on the degree and really make a full commitment where there's no safety net? Or do I get the training that I want, the mentorship that I want right now? Yes or no?
Okay. The mentors that you're looking to learn from, what do they have that you want to learn?
My first instinct is if I do get a master's, I can do some techniques like EMDR, which is a light therapy practice. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
No.
it's relatively new. There's not a ton of clinical data on it yet, but I've experienced EMDR, and what that looked like was because of the life I've lived and how my nervous system has really shut down. I don't have a steady neutral when I wake up and move around in my day to day. So what a practice like EMDR does is reestablishes a neutral for you. And so what that is it lets the left and right brain communicate by shining a light to your left and to your right sequentially. And so you follow it with your eyes And what that does is by crossing the nervous system, so your left eye is related to your right brain, and your right eye is related to your left brain. That's the neural connection. So by changing the stem back and forth, you activate neurons in between. And so, one side of your brain is responsible for cerebral thinking and one is more experiential and emotion. So by letting them communicate allows you to establish a norm. So typically, from the clinical perspective, that when they established this, it was more so for your more severely depressed clients who have a lot more significant psychological disorders. It is, however, very useful for just your day-to-day person who has, experienced trauma and they don't know how to mourn and they don't know how to engage their emotions very well. It's a really interesting way to just get that stim in for them so that they understand what it's like and they have an abstraction of what they're looking for when they're going out throughout their day-to-day. So there are some tools there. As I'm talking to you right now and thinking about it more, there's also this concept of an imposter syndrome. I'm 27 years old. Who am I to sit down with men and try to get to know their deepest, darkest traumas and just go down the rabbit hole with them? And now that I'm also thinking about it, I think for me, it's also a marketing tool for if I established this program in Tucson and had a building, like it's an all men's gym, and I wanted the minor to come in, like a 16-year-old kid, the 16-year-old version of me to walk into my gym. Well, the parents will be funding this at this point, and I need to have some sort of credentialing and trust, especially in the beginning, until my reputation is established in Tucson via word of mouth.
Okay.
So maybe it's a marketing tool for me. Yeah, go ahead.
Interesting. So you're, and this isn't to bash you. This is to push back a little bit. So you're going to spend $40,000 for a degree in order to have a marketing tool. Is that what you're telling me?
I think so. I think that's just what I figured out.
Interesting. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know if there is either. Yeah.
All right.
My counselor. Me and my counselor need to have a conversation.
All right. Now, what is it about you said that you've talked with the older men that you used to train with, right? And these are men that have already opened up to you on a little bit of a deeper level, or just a friendship relationship that has formed over time?
Just friendship relationship that has formed over time. I use that relationship as a scaffold. So the young man that was 16, the way I viewed them, if they would have stepped into a more intense mentorship that involved not only the physical discipline, but now we're talking about emotional integrity and spiritual integrity, what would be the impact if those dialogues were just happening? Because there's not necessarily a right answer, I think, right? I think it's like an organic interview like this where me feeding off of your body language and you feeding off mine, just having the dialogue and get the inquiry going is really helpful, because just like a good counselor asks good questions, a good mentor will also ask good questions. And in the mentorship process, we're not giving people answers. We're just giving them a space to explore the dialogue,
So do you believe that you could start opening that dialogue up with some of these friendships that you've already formed now?
Like with my mentors who are older, or I've been hesitant to step into that because in my male brain there's still this hierarchy in some regards. So like the coach that I talked to this morning, I still refer to him as my coach in my brain, and so it's difficult for me to see myself as equal. Like there's still the hierarchy of, oh, he is my coach and I submit to him concept that in my head, because I haven't established myself, I am not up to his eye to eye level. And so I think I am hesitant to ask him, hey, would you be willing to sit down and engage with your stories with me? So that,
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this now. You've touched on spiritual beliefs throughout our conversation so far. Is there a hierarchy in your spiritual beliefs amongst the people, our everyday world? Okay. Do your
Is there a
spiritual beliefs match? Do your spiritual beliefs and what you believe say that there is a hierarchy in humanity? And if there's a humanity in the world, do those match up? Does that make sense? If not, I
Yeah,
can reword it.
yeah. So within regards to the church community, there is a hierarchy. Like you have a
Okay.
pastor, and then you have church elders, and those are the people you submit to. But then once
Okay.
you walk out into the world, no, my spiritual beliefs don't have any sort of hierarchy
Okay.
system. So now I'm starting to see the hubris in my sentences
Hmm.
that I just spoke a couple minutes ago.
Interesting. What
Yeah,
it then what do you think is a stronger belief? That there is a hierarchy or your spiritual beliefs?
likely that for sure the hierarchy,
Okay.
because that's what I'm living off of right now, right? I'm living in the
Mhm.
fear and the hesitancy. So
Mm.
that's certainly the belief, right?
Interesting.
Um, because Jordan Peterson talks about it, like
Mhm.
believing is what you're acting out. That's a
Mhm.
very Eastern concept, but
Mhm.
um, that's I'm starting to buy into that more the more I sit down with people and watch their stories and listen to
Mhm.
them say certain sentences of what they say is true, but the rest of their body is rejecting it, and their voice changes, their
Mhm.
eyes, goes to the left or right. They stop making eye contact, and there's a disbelief there. So I would say that I certainly submit to the hierarchy concept more than my spiritual concepts. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
What has Jordan Peterson um been able to teach you, and how have you emulated what he's taught you?
Wow, man, that's a big question. I've spent a lot of hours. So the first and most important thing that Jordan Peterson taught me was to stop being a nihilist.
Okay.
So when I was a senior in college, I had a rough patch and a breakup there that did not it was not a good time.
Mhm.
And I was following Jordan Peterson, and someone had bought me a ticket to go to Colorado to see him in person because I was just very inquisitive about some of the things he was talking about. And
Mhm.
in that lecture in Colorado, his essential, his thesis for the night was debunking nihilism, and that, there is meaning to life and purpose. And for me, that lecture turned into I'm doing whatever I want because I don't want to submit to any sort of value structure and be held accountable.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm not getting the things done that I want to get done, is because I have no structure that I'm submitting to. I have no accountability in my life. And I'm still being a child. I'm still behaving like a
Mhm.
child.
Mhm.
And that was why that breakup happened, because I was behaving like a child. I was not submitting to what I said I submitted to, and living a false life, which was a really tough pill to swallow.
Mhm.
Um, so that was the first piece. And then I read 12 Rules for Life, and I started to dive into concepts like, in the Bible, it says treat others how you want to be treated. That's kind of a biblical concept. But Jordan
Mhm.
Peterson kind of flips it, and he says, well, treat yourself how you treat others, right? And
Mhm.
so that's when I started a dialogue on self-worth. What are my core beliefs about myself?
Mhm.
Which until recently it has taken, since 21 to now to really break some of these core beliefs of I'm not good enough,
Mhm.
I don't know anything,
Mhm.
or, my identity is what I do. These concepts, those things take years to unravel because the narrative has been that for over 20 years. So now, how do you undo a 20-year narrative? Well, it just
Mhm.
takes time and practice and frequency. Um, and then I think I remember a specific moment when I really decided to commit to men's work.
Mhm.
And Jordan Peterson was talking about how, in the men's community, depression is the highest. We're more likely to kill ourselves. We're more likely to get killed, and our lives are more dangerous, and they have been
Mhm.
historically. And that there's really no efforts to rescue men, right? And I
Mhm.
remember just watching this video and him bawling, and that was likely one of the first times my empathy came out as a man, and I really was just, my heart broke for my brothers that feel alone, in their day to day. We might live in the Western world where we have water and food easily accessed, but there's also this emotional and spiritual component of humanity that needs to be fostered and nurtured, and most men don't get that. And I remember just bawling for like 15 minutes and just realizing that that's where my heart is. My heart is for the men whose heart are broken and it was never acknowledged. And so that's part of this project, is like, I want men to have a platform where they can go before other men and say how their heart was broken and it be okay. Not enough of this lone wolf stuff. This lone wolf narrative needs to end. We're social creatures. Even men are social creatures, and the impact of the lone wolf has been horrible to the family. And so I want to put an end to that as much as I can, at least.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how many members do you have in your gym right now?
So I have three. I have three
Okay.
people right now. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just, I pay overhead to another dude at his gym. And I bring people in for Storywork, and that's what I do. And I started 3 months ago. So 3 is good enough for me right now.
Okay. Now, are those three men, those all do just physical or emotional, spiritual sessions with you as well?
Both. Yeah. Both. Right now, both. Yeah.
Okay. Now, have you reached out to any of the older men that have become mentors and friends to join the gym or come in?
I have not. Most of them are not in Tucson, so they wouldn't be able to come in.
Okay.
But as I sit down and talk to men about this idea, I get a lot of positive feedback, but I never get the courageous step of faith to enter into this, emotional, spiritual dojo. A lot of guys are willing to work out, and almost no men are willing to step in and face their story for what it really is, right? I had one of my buddies tell me, he said, "You don't know me, man. Like, we can't do that. You don't know me." And it's like, well, the reality is when people do story work, it turns out that they don't know themselves. So why don't we take the time to get to know you as a person and what really makes your heart break, and find some redemption in some of these bad stories that you have,
Now, I'm going to push it back again because you said
Go for it.
never, right?
Yeah.
But you already have 3 members.
That's true.
It's
That's
not
true.
never. All right. So it's sometimes.
Yes, it is sometimes.
Right?
And I will say I have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Okay,
I was just going to say I had to. You go, really.
Okay, got it. And then Lifted has done a really good job of shifting that mindset. And I really appreciate the accountability there. But I have one guy who's done so great. He's lost 70 pounds with me. He's about to take the GED. He's been pushing that off for 12 years. He's 32 years old. He's got 3 kids. And he's about to go take the GED and he's been afraid of it for over a decade. And now he wants to go be a cop. And so just giving him just a little bit of encouragement. It's amazing what a little bit of encouragement will do to a man, especially if he can receive it. And so that's also part of it. Can you receive good things from people? Can you receive a compliment or a blessing from someone and you not brush it off as nothing? Because a man who can't do that, that tells me a lot where he is at emotionally, spiritually, neurologically in his life.
I want to backtrack a little bit to when you were closer to that 7th grade age. Now, there was a lot coming from the outside, like just your network in general, family, things like that, that was pushing you, whether it was at a conscious or subconscious level, to go into the medical field. Do you still listen to those outside sources, or have you become more internalized with where you want to go with things?
I'm 50-50 right now in this process. So it's not that I listen to the voice of my parents or my brother, but their voices still have an impact. So My parents have not gone out and blatantly said, this isn't going to work. You're not going to make money. This is going to fall apart. And we're really disappointed. But their face and posture says everything else. Right. And then my brother's the same way. Me and my brother have a 14-year gap in age. So in many ways, I've realized that I've projected the father figure onto him.
Mm-hmm.
And so his voice has a huge impact. And I could tell you exactly what happened when I decided I wanted to be a surgeon. My brother basically told me to go be a surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And, trying to, both be honest with the impact of what of that, imprinting, and then honor him as my brother still, it's really difficult. And, me and my brother have our disagreements. He's a retired special forces operator. He has his opinions and they are strong opinions. And
Mm-hmm.
so managing a relationship with him has been difficult, but on the other side of it there's been so much growth between both of us as people. So, but good things, hard things are worth having, like I put in work and we got something out of it and we're getting more things out of it. So yes, people still emotionally impact what I'm doing, but it's not changing what I'm doing. So I can take the disappointment and I can process that and mourn that and be like, oh, it really sucks that my parents and my brother aren't entirely on board with that. But then I can still go out and do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so freeing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being able to hold both, because I don't think it's appropriate to not let other voices have an impact in my life.
Mm-hmm.
What's important is having the autonomy to absorb both, the positive, the negative voices, and then looking at them for what they are and then acting out with what I want.
Okay. So you had said that right now it's about 50-50 internal, external.
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like for you in a perfect world? Let me rephrase it. What do you want?
In a perfect world, what
Yeah,
do I
not in a
want? I
perfect
want
world.
to,
What does it look like from an internal, external? Would it be 100% full blast? This is what I'm going to do, and no one's going to tell me otherwise, or is it going to be 90%? This is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to take 10% of opinions from others. Where's the line, and what do you want?
I would say if we're doing percentages, I think 80-20 sounds
Okay.
pretty good to me because I
Okay.
still value, having mentorship and counsel is very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want that 20% where if I'm going to do something, especially risky, like what I'm about to do, I would still like to be able to hear and listen to wise counsel,
Okay.
but then still be able to have, take the counsel, look at it for what it is. Okay, is this valid? And then execute hard. Because I think if it was like 50-50, I'm kind of in a state of hesitancy still,
Mm-hmm.
like I sat on this idea for almost 18 months before I started executing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't regret it because that was a necessary lesson. That was a
Mm-hmm.
necessary 18-month lesson. But it's this procrastination needs to slowly die so that
Okay.
we can accomplish things.
Of the 20%, who is included in the 20%?
Oh man, who is who is included? My inner circle, people who have earned the right to speak into my life. The random
Okay.
stranger who hasn't earned and reciprocated in relation with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I give a piece of myself and you don't give a piece of yourself to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a reciprocation. We can't really build a relationship and a foundation on that. But if I know you for who you are and you know me for who I am, I understand where your advice is coming from and what your intention is. And because we have this strong relationship based on reciprocation and honesty and vulnerability, I can take that and like you don't mean harm when you give me a piece of a critique or something like that. So most of the people who speak into my life now are people who have earned it. They've earned it. I know a lot about them. I know exactly who they are as people. Um, and they're really useful accountability partners,
Okay.
you know.
Of that 20% of the inner circle, um, there needs to be a give and take of love, more or less,
Hmm.
is what I'm getting at. Love and
Hmm.
respect. Is there a hierarchy in your inner circle, or is everyone in the inner circle viewed as equal?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Are they viewed as equal? I guess it would, if we could change the abstraction. So it'd be,
Mm-hmm.
I guess the hierarchy there would be a hierarchy because it would also be dependent on what am I seeking wisdom about?
Okay.
Does that make sense? Because, if
Yes.
you had like 10 years of experience in business and I have a business inquiry, and then, my friend over here who's 25 and has no business experience, you're
Mm-hmm.
suddenly going to be a little bit more valuable in regards to my inquiry. But other than that, I mean, there is a priority list, right? So, like my girlfriend would have a higher priority in my
Mm-hmm.
inner circle than someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but see, yeah, and I'm also thinking about it in the context that seasons change, right? Like I have friends that
Mm-hmm.
are having kids and they're married now, and there's a distance now, and I wouldn't immediately seek out their advice or wisdom or sit down for a 3-hour intimate conversation
Mm-hmm.
because they're not as available.
Mm.
Um, but does that impact their place in the hierarchy? Um, I guess I wouldn't want a hierarchy, but just thinking out loud over here.
Okay. I've got one more follow up here.
Good.
So you had talked about business. If I was in business for 10 years, I may have more knowledge in that area than you, who may have a business for
Hmm.
1 year.
Hmm.
If you have gone throughout your life and built up um, this knowledge emotion of emotional intelligence, right?
Hmm.
Let's say that there's a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is high, 1 is low. Let's
Yeah.
say you're a 4, okay?
Hmm.
These men that you could reach out to that are high in the hierarchy for you, right? Would you agree that these men, although they may be more successful in business and fitness or whatever, do you believe that you're higher in the emotional intelligence realm than they are?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Interesting.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Huh. That is an
So,
interesting
although
question.
they
Yeah.
are higher in other
Hmm.
areas, you are higher in this area than them. And in turn, you could help them.
Yeah. You set me up.
Interesting. I'm just listening. I'm just listening. That's it. That's
You're a good
it.
listener. Yeah. I didn't think about it like that.
Mm. You
That's a
said
good
it, not me.
abstraction of my circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, you said it, not me. So, but
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I
this
guess, oh, I was gonna
you
say,
go.
I guess that's an interesting concept too, because we don't, in the category of business,
Mm-hmm.
or we don't categorize emotional intelligence. We don't value that in Western
Mm-hmm.
society highly,
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time we can't squeeze the blood from the stone from it and produce things, because Western society is really about a lot about cerebral production, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting concept. I'm gonna chew
Mm.
on that for a while.
Yeah,
Huh.
you'll have to call me or text me and let me know your thoughts once it's marinated a little bit longer. So,
Yeah.
but
Huh.
as we come to an end here, uh I have someone from I have the last guest ask a question for you, okay? And I think
Hmm.
this is perfect for you. This is from Jansen. I don't know if you know Darren. He was an enlifted guy as well. Um,
Hmm. I
but
think I've heard the
he
name.
he does like ultra running.
Okay, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So his question is, what is the best book you've read on spirituality and why?
The best book on spirituality and why. Oh man. On spirituality. So there's the best book on spirituality. It's a book called Unwanted by Jay Stringer. It was the book that rescued me from my pornography addiction.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's a book about biblical principles and clinical principles, and what does the clinical data say, and what does the Bible say about it's not specifically about pornography, but it's about broken sexuality and the impact that it can have, and where does it stem from in regards to our origin story of when we were kids. Like sexual trauma, how does that impact us? Or how can an abusive father, like how can that suddenly manifest into a poorly regulated sexual complex where you're a sex addict, you're addicted to pornography. That book also has a curriculum with it. It's a 5-month curriculum for like $25 a month. I'm actually going through it too, just for my own educational purposes. But that book really, really got me thinking about how my childhood impacted today, how I think, how I speak, and how I look at myself. That book.
Interesting. All right. Now, to put you on the spot, this is always where people get slipped up. I'm looking for a question for the next guest here.
Okay.
Nice little
question for the next guest.
And it can be in any realm.
In any realm?
We've had many different, it doesn't have to be growth, self-development realm. I've had some funny questions. I've had questions about, it can be anything.
All right. My question is, this is deep, but it's an exciting question. Yeah. What are your values, and why are those your values?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do you want to give us some plug of where we can find your gym, reach out to you, book a session, book a call?
Yeah, so I work out of Wildcat CrossFit in Tucson, Arizona, but you can find my Instagram. It's called Project Gibborim, Gibborim, and you'll find my email there. I'm currently branding myself and building a website, so I imagine in the next 3 or 4 weeks I'll have website up, booking availability, like direct links for booking calls. And I'm just, I'm starting it up, man. I'm really excited.
Right. Hell yeah. I'm excited to see you in 6 months and what has come about. So, Cole, thank you very much for chatting with me today. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
I don't know about you. So
I learned, obviously. Yeah.
Very interesting guy to talk to. I appreciate you doing this. And remember, guys, this is his first podcast somehow.
Oh.
But I believe I believe you'll be on more.
Thank you, John. That means a lot. This being month 3 and being the first podcast, it's been. I feel so alive right now, dude. It is awesome.
Hell yeah! All right, thanks, guys.